ask you by Allah. What is our obligation in relation to that? And in terms of asking someone for knowledge, then this is something which is recommended and permissible. Allah says in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you really do not know. So it's not impermissible to ask people for knowledge. كُنْ شِفَاءُ الْعِيِّ سُؤَالٍ isn't the cure for ignorance asking questions. So we know the importance in Islam of asking questions and the permissibility of doing so rather than the recommendation of doing so. And you ask the people qualified to answer you. So asking about knowledge is something recommended. If you don't have knowledge about it, you need to know. Sometimes it can even be an obligation. If you have a pressing issue, you need to get a verdict in order to apply that. Or there's an issue in relation to your ibadat, your acts of worship, which you don't know, and you have to perform that. You need to ask about it. So the ruling of asking can differ depending on the situation. But you don't ask just for curiosity or excessiveness. You're not asking questions just to know. For example, someone, he knows something, but he wants to ask someone else just to make sure they know it. That's not from the questioning that's permissible or beneficial. Or you ask in order to belittle someone. Someone doesn't know, you ask them, you say, oh, you don't know? I know. What benefit is that? And that's why from that angle it's not permissible. كثرة السؤال. نهى رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم, he says in one hadith in Muslim, إن الله يكره, Allah, He dislikes for you three things, and one of them is كثرة السؤال. A lot of asking. It can be carried both ways. A lot of questioning, that's excessive, unnecessary, and unbeneficial, or excessive begging. And we're going to get to that begging part. This is what the chapter is really talking about. It's talking about asking people for things that you need or want. So here the Shaykh says the ruling regarding whoever refuses the one who asks by Allah is dislike or prohibition, depending on the condition of the person being asked or the asking individual. So what's the ruling if someone asks you by Allah's name for something, then the person who is asking by Allah for something to refuse it, means refuse to give someone this, is either dislike or is prohibited. So if someone comes to me and asks me by Allah for something, depending on the situation it can be disliked, or other situation it can be prohibited, depending on what the person is asking about or for, and my situation as the one who is giving. Because sometimes you're not capable, so you cannot say in every situation you have to reply. Because if it creates harm to you, well, Islam doesn't allow us to harm ourselves. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. There is no harm nor reciprocating harm. So in the beginning, Shaykh begins with what's the permissibility or the ruling in relation to asking by Allah's name. Before we even get there, what's the ruling about asking people for anything anyways? Is it from Islam to ask people for things? ما حكم مسألة? What's the ruling on asking and begging? This is what we're talking about in the beginning. So here the Shaykh mentions, rahimahullah, that asking from the aspect of its being discouraged and from its impropriety for an individual to asking, or is inappropriate for an individual to ask anyone anything except during necessity. So the general rule is it's not allowed in Islam. And we're going to use the word prohibited because that's what is the correct opinion. It's prohibited to ask somebody for something, and what we're intending specifically here is financial, means money and wealth or material gains. And you could even say in general, anything, unless there's a need for it. That's the hukum, that's the general ruling. And Islam does not encourage people to be beggars, nor to ask people excessively for things which they don't need. Because this is a phenomenon we have nowadays of excessive asking and begging. And sometimes even just to make your life convenient, you bother other people for something you can do. Can you do this for me? Even though he can do it himself, or she can do it herself. So in Islam, it's not permissible to ask anybody for anything, and specifically in relation to wealth and money and material gains, except due to durura, necessity. And the Shaykh says here, the Prophet ﷺ took the pledge of allegiance from his companions that they do not ask anybody for anything to the extent that if a stick fell out of their hands or a whip that they needed when they're at the moment on top of a mount, it means a riding animal, that they should not request somebody to pick it up for them, rather they would go and get it themselves. And the hadith is actually referencing is the hadith in Muslim, where Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he took the pledge of allegiance from the companions, and from the things that he took the pledge of allegiance for, or from them for, was that they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, and على أن تعبدوا الله ولا تشركوا به شيئا والصلوات الخمس وتطيعه, means you worship Allah sincerely without associating any partners with Him. Tawheed, you pray the 5 daily prayers, and thirdly that you obey Him. And then he got to the last point, وَلَا تَسْأَلُوا النَّاسَ شَيْئًا, and do not ask the people anything. So what is this? Nakira fi siyaq al-nafi. And remember, is this, what's the rule here? We have it's a shay'an is a definite. Is it indefinite or indefinite? Indefinite in the form of a negation, which gives us generality. Tufid al-umum. We mentioned this in some lessons before. Anywhere you have the indefinite coming in the context, or the nakira coming in the context of negation, implies generality. So what it means is, don't ask them for anything. So what happened, said, the Sahabi who narrated the hadith said, that I saw these companions who took the pledge of allegiance for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this, that if any one of them were to drop the whip, means they drop their whip, they would not ask someone to get it, rather they go down and get it themselves. That's the fahm that they have from this hadith, their understanding. Other hadith, obviously, the Rasul told other Sahaba the same. Hadith Thawban, Hadith Abu Dhar. Rasul encouraged more than one companion or group of them not to ask for anything. So this is the general ruling. So more specifically, right, if it comes to wealth, asking people for money, asking for their material goods, which someone who doesn't need, it's not a necessity, denying dire need, it's not allowed in Islam. So that's one of the proofs the Shaykh uses, but here are some other proofs. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said in Hadith Samura, إن المسألة كد يكد بها الرجل وجهه إلا أن يسأل الرجل سلطانا أو في أمر لا بد منه. That asking somebody for something, it stains the face. It's a stain which stains the face. Except if someone, he asks another person, unless the person, he asks a sultan, a ruler, or he asks about something which he necessarily needs. La budda min. It's unnecessary. So in this hadith we learn 2 benefits. That a person to ask and he's not in need, it stains. It's a stain on his face. And someone, if he needs to ask, he either asks the sultan, which is the ruler, or the government, or he asks when he's in need. So in those situations, it's allowed. This hadith is Sahih At-Tirmidhi. So very important. So therefore, it's allowed to ask the government if someone is in need, because the government, from their responsibilities over their citizens, is to provide them. To provide them with good, provide them with the resources they need. Another hadith, Rasulullah told Qabisa, the Sahabi, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, إِنَّ الْمَسْأَلَةَ لَا تَحِلُّ إِلَّا لِأَحَدِ ثَلَاثَ. Clear as day. Hadith in Muslim, Rasulullah told Qabisa, begging is not permissible except for in 3 situations, that he mentions those 3. And so in those 3 are found in Hadith Muslim, Hadith 1044. And one of those 3, well, for example, someone, he took on a responsibility which is so great, means financial responsibility, he needs to fulfill on behalf of another person, which he doesn't have enough to pay for, so he needs to beg to get it. Someone, he lost all his goods, someone, he fell into debt, etc. Those kind of situations. But the Rasul, what was the ruling? He said, لا تحله. And this is what is the correct opinion. In origin, asking people for without need is prohibited. This is the opinion of the permanent committee. And here Shaykh al-Uthaymeen also, he says the same. So very important, we should not be asking people for their wealth, or for their goods, or for anything if we don't need it. In fact, if you look at the Quran, Allah praises the needy person because they don't ask people, they don't beg. Imagine the needy person is in need. He needs, but he doesn't ask. Allah says in the Quran, talking about them, He says, للفقراء الذين أحصروا في سبيل الله لا يستطيعون ضربا في الأرض يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء من تعفف تعرفهم بسيماهم لا يسأل الناس إلحافا. Allah says that for the fuqara, the poor, needy, who in Allah's cause are restricted from travel and cannot move about in the land, the one who knows them thinks that they are rich because of their modesty and their chastity. They don't ask people. You may know them by their mark, they do not beg of people at all. لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. Subhanallah. This is the one who's fuqara, faqir. He is in need, he doesn't ask. What about the one who is not a faqir? You have it, you still ask. It's not Islamic. Very important. We need to pay attention to Islam, teaching us to be givers, not takers. وَالْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِنْ يَدِ السُّفْلَى. Upper hand is better than lower hand. That's how we should train ourselves. Be contributors, don't be takers. Why? Because even if you didn't need, Allah said the needy one doesn't like to ask, because it's type of shame when you have to go ask. What about someone who has and he just asks because it's convenient? Asking people all the time. So here we benefit from this, and if you want to know more, there are so many ahadith we cannot cover in this sitting. Upwards of 100 different ahadith prohibiting begging. Imam al-Wadi'i rahimahullah, in his Kitab, al-Mas'ala, he brings over 100 ahadith in the prohibition of begging. Over 100. And this is again showing how Islam teaches us to be the givers, not the takers. Unless someone has a need, which is permissible. And this is the difference to two. Or he's asking from the government, who's supposed to be giving the people who are in need, or who cannot do alone, or can by themselves or by their own means. So Shaykh says here, and the meaning actually necessitates that because if you respect yourself and not degrade yourself by asking people, you will remain honorable. So that's the hikmah, the wisdom behind not asking. Have self-respect. Even if you're in need, you don't like to ask because you don't want to tarnish your honor. And this shows you again, he says, that it becomes a means of protection for you, because putting down your face to anyone, whoever it may be, this requires something of dislike. And the Rasul said, hold back from that which is in the hands of the people, and the people will like you and love you. One of the means to get the people to love you, don't ask them for that which they have. Izhad fima 'inda al-nas. Be aesthetic, literally be avoiding that which is in the hand of people. يحبك الناس. People will love you. And then the opposite is true then. من قياس العكس. The one who's always asking people for something, people hate him. And this is something. وخير الشاهد واقع. Right? We know the best proof for this is reality. Anyone you know who's always asking you something, you don't like to meet them. Because he's always asking. You feel like, subhanAllah, he's going to ask me, she's going to ask me. Whereas Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had a higher caliber, higher character. He was not annoyed by this. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He loved to give, he always would. But for us, we know. So one thing we also train ourselves, always ask Allah. As'alullah min fadli. Ask Allah for His bounty. So this is another training element for us as Muslims, that we know the nature of man. If you ask them Allah, they'll get angry with you. So the believer always asks Allah and avoids asking people illa al-darura. And this shows you how Islam actually cultivates a society that is independent, i.e. self-sufficient and content with the means of the rizq of Allah. They are people of humble humility and modesty, and people who don't like to create difficulty on others. So here it says in the Shaykh rahimahullah, therefore asking is basically either discouraged or prohibited except during necessities or difficult conditions. In reality, we said the correct opinion is prohibited. Because of the hadith, it says لا تحلوا. And Rasulullah gave us the reasons behind it. And obviously, when there's a need, or you fall into the three, it becomes permitted. He says here that some of the scholars of fiqh said, this is important, they said this in their books, that the one who is allowed to receive something is allowed to request for it. Some of the ulama, they mention this fiqh, that someone who is allowed to receive something, or mustahiq, or someone who deserves something, you're allowed to ask someone for it. But Shaykh says this is actually not correct. It's a disputable point, because the Messenger ﷺ said, an individual will continue to ask until he will come on the day of resurrection having no flesh on his face. Subhanallah. So one of the hadith that prohibits begging and asking unnecessarily. A person will keep asking the people until he will come Yawm al-Qiyamah وَلَيْسَ فِي وَجْهِهِ مُزْعَةُ اللَّحْمِ. Nothing on his face of flesh. Just shows you how powerful that example is to prevent us from being people of this nature. So this principle, some of the fuqaha, I found the Hanabila, like Ibn Muflih in Al-Furu' and Sharh Al-Iqna' and others, they mentioned this principle. مَنْ أُبِيحَ لَهُ أَخْذُ شَيْءٍ أُبِيحَ لَهُ سُؤَالُهُ. But this is not a correct opinion. In that, because some people may abuse this and then try to take more and try to get more. And we said the ayah mentioned the person who's needy. In this case, what did we just mention? The ayah, the faqir. Who's the foremost person to receive the zakat? Fuqara. They head the ayah, the leading group in the ayah of zakat is the fuqara. Allah says those people of them, وَلَا يَسْأَلُونَ النَّاسِ الْحَافَ. So someone to take this and say, oh no, but I'm deserving of this, I'm going to go ask, that's not the best. It's not the correct way. So with this being said, the Shaykh says, continue, as for requesting for help with status or bodily assistance, means you ask someone to physically help you, then it's discouraged unless there's a need. And this applies to other types of assistance. For example, someone may ask you for help in their homework, some may ask you for help to find a job, some may ask you for help with their car. All these things which is not a must. Like you don't necessarily need someone to ask you, but you want them to help you. It's not haram. Let it be known. No one confusing this lesson that it's haram to ask someone for homework help. Nobody's saying that. We're saying that if you don't need it, it's discouraged to ask. And it makes sense. If you know your homework, you know your lesson, your assignment, you don't ask anybody, you do it. But if you didn't need extra help just to confirm, it's discouraged only, not haram. But if it's in need, that for example, someone he needs it, it's important, he needs that help, then it's permissible. And the brothers and people around him should be aiding him. So there's no contradiction between what we're mentioning here and assisting the Muslim. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. There's no contradiction between this verse of cooperating one another in birr and taqwa, righteousness and piety, and between asking the people. Because if someone is in need where he needs to ask, now it's allowed for him to ask. What do we do in response? We help. وَاللَّهُ فِي عَوْنِ عَبْدٍ مَا كَانَ عَبْدٌ فِي عَوْنِ أَخِيهِ. Allah is in the assistance of his brother as long as they are in the assistance of his fellow brother. Or Allah is in the assistance of the servant as long as the servant is in the assistance of their brother. So no contradiction. What we're trying to say is if you don't need the help, and you go and you ask for it. And why is this also important? A side benefit we realize that when people start taking unnecessary help, they actually detract from those who actually need real help. If I'm always going and asking people for things from their material wealth or from their assistance or knowledge and experience, there's someone who actually needs it. I'm burdening that person who actually needs it from getting his assistance because here I am coming just asking for extra. And this is important, especially in relation to material goods, because I may come and take from a resource and abuse it, and then the person who needs comes and there's nothing left. That's why Rasulullah was so strict in relation to people who try to ask him to gain more. Al-Hakum Mutakathur. Destroyer is the one who is going out to increase. So if you ask people for takathuran, someone says whoever asks him excessively to increase his own wealth, let it be known he's only taking an ember of the hellfire. A coal from the coal of the hellfire. That's all you're getting. Take more, take less. And we see why. Because I'm here taking advantage of somebody's generosity or somebody's experience and help, and then somebody else who's needy doesn't get any attention. Because here I am saying, give me, give me, give me. And Rasulullah taught Sahaba about this and teaches you where Islam is when it comes to our ethics. We are a nation of contribution. We give people. We don't encourage asking unless needed. On top of this now comes the question now if somebody's asking you. If someone comes to you and asks you now for something, then we have two conditions. Someone who just comes and asks you without saying Allah's name, just asks you, can I have this? Or do you have such and such? So the Shaykh says if that is from the thing which is allowed in the Sharia, Allah has made it halal, then you should give him to it, or give that person that which they asked, and you should give that person without any need, any bother. You should give it to them. For example, someone comes for you for money, you give them your zakat money. This is good. So the first situation, someone just asks you something. This is in relation to the giver now. If someone asks me, it's good that I give them. And they're not asking for haram, nor are they asking for something which I cannot give. I can give it. I have enough. I should give. Now the benefit we take is that what if the person asks you for something and you're not capable? If you're not capable, then obviously you don't give it. So the general ruling then, if someone asks you for something and you are able to give it, you should give it. You should. We don't say you have to give it, because circumstances could show that you necessarily don't have the ability to give it. For example, they ask you for a little bit extra money, and that's the only extra money you have. And then you say, okay, if I give it to you, I'm going to be in need. For example, someone asks you for some change, and you need the change to take the train back home. You can't give them that with little you need for the train. Because what is the hukmah or the hukm when it comes to giving? You begin with yourself. Ibda bi nafsik, start with yourself. I need that money to go home. I can't give it to you. Sorry. It's nothing wrong with that. That's not bad manners. That's taking care of yourself. Some hadith mentioned give sadaqah to yourself. Feed yourself, clothe yourself. Begin with yourself. Even when it comes to anything, you begin with yourself, then those nearest. So if I don't have enough, then I have to help myself first. I don't give it to the person, now I'm stranded, I can't go home. Now obviously, there's something called ithar. When you go above and beyond, you're altruistic. You put people before you, like the Sahaba. I mentioned Surah Hashr, how they have this altruism, we call it, this ability to give, put others before them. Altruistic nature of them, Allah praised them for greatly. They were in need, they gave to their brothers in Muhajirun. That's a higher level. But you begin with yourself. But let's say you have extra dollars, I don't need it. I'm not dying of hunger, I'm not nothing. So here I give. This is what's good. And this is what the proofs show in Islam. So this is the first thing. If someone asks you for something, and they're not asking you for haram, then the original ruling is you should give it to them if you're able. The proofs are many. For example, Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Allah says from the believer there is a due right in their wealth. For who? The one who asks and the one who is in debt. لِلسَّائِلِ, the questioner, وَالْمَحْرُومِ. So Surah Ma'arij, ayah 24 and 25. Another example, Allah says, وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. As for the questioner, don't repel them. We know these ayat, alhamdulillah, many of us memorized this. So keep it in mind. وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْهَرْ. Don't reject on them, don't repulse them. Means if you're able to give them. And so we benefit from taking this. This is the way the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to be. This is a sunnah. Jabir, he reported, Jabir radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he said, ما سئل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم شيئا قط فقال لا. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was never asked about anything or to give something except he never said to them no. Hadith Bukhari Muslim. He was never asked to give something to which he replied no. Now this is important hadith. What does that mean? Did he ever reject somebody? So the scholars did different interpretations of the hadith. One interpretation they gave was that he never ever rejected anyone's request. Someone asked him for something, he gave them. In one hadith, even the shirt off his back, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. The kind of generosity that he had, he even gave his shirt off the back. The Sahaba got upset when they heard that one man he asked. He said, you know, he doesn't say no. And he gave it to him, but he said, I needed it. I wanted to use it as a shroud. SubhanAllah. The man shrouded himself in that. So the Rasul didn't say no, he gave it to him. So this is his sunnah. So some scholars interpret the hadith, he never ever said no. Someone asked, he gave, if he was able. The other interpretation, Ibn Hajar inclines towards, rahimahullah, was that he would look to see if giving this person was something suitable. If it was, he would give. If not, he would keep quiet. He wouldn't tell him no. Literally, la. He wouldn't say anything like this. He would say either something different, or he would keep quiet, or he would find a way not to give it to him because it's not suitable for that person. So there's no contradiction between the two in the fact that Rasulullah always often used to give, but it doesn't mean he never ever said no to somebody. So Ibn Hajar says no. And he uses a proof to ayah in Surah At-Tawbah when they came to ask in the battle of Tabuk for riding animal. قُلْ لَا أَجِدُ مَا أَحْمِلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ. He said, I don't have anything to give you to ride on. He said, La, I don't have anything to help you ride upon. But some scholars use that ayah and say, no, he didn't say no, he said something more than that. So there's a big discussion. The point being, Rasulullah always used to give. We know this much. This was his characteristic. So if someone has extra and they ask you, give, it's better. Now, if someone asks you, the Shaykh says number 2, that's the first one. They just ask you purely. They didn't ask you by Allah's name, they just asked you. It's recommended, sunnah to give. If someone, and sometimes, right, depending on the situation, you don't have to give. Means you don't have, you don't give. If you're not able, you don't. The second condition, the person used Allah's name. So they say, As'aluka billah. I ask you by Allah to give me. So now this is different because they use Allah's name. So he says here, this person, even though he might not be entitled to getting it, because he used Allah's name now, we have to show respect and reverence for Allah's name. So very important. When someone asks you by Allah, you give it. Because the hadith we're going to come to right now, which is the whole point of this chapter, the hadith of Umar, مَنْ سَأَلَ بِاللَّهِ فَأَعْطُوهُ. Whoever asks you by Allah's name, give it to them. Why are you giving to them? Because they ask you by Allah, and you show ta'zeem lillah. So it's very important. But again, with that comes conditions too. Because somebody may come to you and try to coerce you to give them money by asking you, by Allah, you have to give me $1,000. And they're thinking, subhanAllah, I don't even have enough for my tuition, you want $1,000? And they ask you by Allah, now you feel tight, you feel squeezed. So there's conditions even then, you don't have to. But you see what it means. If someone asks you by Allah, it's very good to reply, and to give them, to answer them if you have the ability. Because we show respect for Allah's name. This is why this chapter is in Kitab At-Tawheed. From the Tawheed of Allah is veneration for Allah. And from veneration of Allah is His names. Subhanallah. This is the deen, guys. This is the deen of Islam. When someone asks you by Allah, we love Allah and respect Him so much, we listen to that person's request out of reverence for Allah. This is Tawheed. This is what we mean when we say the importance of Tawheed. It's not just Salah. There's more to it. Even the Mu'amalat are affected by the Tawheed. So we benefit from that. However, if He asks you for something which is haram, or it's going to bring you difficulty, then you don't have to give. So for example, if someone asks you for $1,000 and you don't have that, or you barely have enough for yourself, you say, I can't. I cannot do it. I'm sorry. Somebody else maybe he can help you. Same, if someone asks you for khamr, alcohol, intoxicants, you don't give, obviously. فَلَا تَعَاوُنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. You don't help them purchase narcotics or drugs or weaponry or whatever haram. You can't. And then the second example he says is someone asks you for something which is not befitting. Someone asks you for, what are the secrets between you and your family? This is not a befitting question someone asks you. Don't answer that person. Even if they ask you by Allah, this is calling darar. It's not a befitting Islam. We talk about things like this. These are private issues. Even if they ask you by Allah to expose them, you can't. So what we benefit from it should not be something haram they're asking you. And this leads us to another point, which is very common in this setting downtown, in this campus particularly, since we're in downtown, that somebody, he may be asked on the street downtown by someone who's homeless or otherwise for money, and you don't know what they're going to do with the money. And this is a big issue. Most people, they have confusion in relation to this. Inshallah, we'll take this mas'ala, we'll take this issue. The first thing we should know then is that if the person, you know they're going to use it for haram, means you know. Very important. Like for example, I know this person from his history, I've asked him before, he gave him before, and then he used the money for drugs, or he asked me, literally, I'm going to use this to buy cigarettes. He told you, you're not permissible. It's not permissible then. If you know they're going to use it for haram, it's not permissible to give them. Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, who was asked, rahimahullah, himself in his Sharh al-Bulugh al-Maram, in the tape number 11, the Kitab Zakat, when he's doing the explanation, he said that the question was, if we know that one who's asking for money is asking in order to buy cigarettes, for example, to smoke, what's the ruling? So for example, in our context, someone is homeless, comes and asks, I need money for drugs. He literally told you. Or you know he's a drug addict from his experience, you've seen him, he's doing this, and it's most probable that he might use it. Shaykh says we give him food then instead. You don't give him the money. It's a faidah. And that's why if you witness yourself, if you ask them, I'll buy you something, say, I don't need it. Right? Say, okay, that's clear to me now, what you wanted. Because you asked him, hey, I'll buy you some food, I don't need it, that's okay, I need money. Then I'm sorry, I can't. Because what I know of what you're going to do, you either told me I have a strong proof that this person is a drug addict, or he has a problem with the drugs or intoxicants, etc. And the Shaykh explained here that, in summary of his answer, he explained that the voluntary charity does not have to be given in money. That's the first thing. So someone asks you for money, no one says you have to give back the money. You can give them that which is beneficial to them. Secondly, he says also that you need to benefit them that which is actually beneficial. So to give them fruits and vegetables or food to eat or something warm, it's better for them than what they might have intended to buy. And so then this is his fatwa in that regard. If you know the person is going to buy it. So we put the condition there, because what if you don't know? That's the next part. But another benefit he also mentioned, even if somebody who's asking you, maybe your family member, for example your parents or someone, your family asking you to help them purchase something haram. For example, some people, if there's someone in the family is a smoker, they may ask you, go buy me a pack of cigarettes. You can't help them. Even if it's your father, Shaykh mentioned, even if it's your father. From birr, he said, from piety to your father and dutifulness is not to give him. That's from dutifulness, because obeying him in haram is aiding him wrong and making his situation worse. That's not obedience. عاشروهن بالمعروف. In the house, we're supposed to deal with our family members and nice. صاحبهما في الدنيا معروفة. How do you do this? Be good to your parents by helping them what they need. If your father's trial by smoking, buying them a cigarette is not obedience, it's disobedience. And on top of that, you're aiding him in that which is going to ruin him. If you're dutiful, you say, sorry, I can't, brother. And you try to be strong in that, because this is his true dutifulness. You can find in Sharh al-Salihin, volume 1, page 283. So the first case is someone asks you in downtown or other places, and if they're homeless or otherwise, and they're asking you, and you know it's for haram, you cannot give them. If you know it is, so they're going to buy it with drugs, they told you, or they said so, or it looks like from that which you know of them. It means you have knowledge. Next, what if the person, we don't know the situation? And this is what you might find to be common. You're walking down the street, someone says, can I get some money? And then you're like, subhanAllah, I don't know their hal. What condition are they on? Are they drugs? Do they do haram? Are they buying something? If you don't know the hal, then the general ruling remains, which is the sunnah to give them. Shaykh Ibn Baz rahimahullah, he said, and they asked him more than once about this, what if the person's condition is unknown to us? So for example, someone who's homeless or someone who's needy or someone who's trialed in the streets asks you for something and you don't know his situation. Then the general ruling is, if you have, you give. He said this is the asl because sunnah in general. And he used the ayat we used earlier with sa'ili wal mahroom. This is general. So if you don't know, you can give. If you want to ask more and inquire more and to clarify, you're also able to do that. And this is the point. So the situation right now, we have two. If you know the situation, you know they're going to buy drugs, you know they're going to do something wrong with that money, you cannot give them. In fact, this is one of the dangerous things. Many hadith come and show this is not permissible in Islam to give your money to someone who's going to waste it away in wrong and sin. If you don't know the situation, it's unknown to you, you don't know this person, you can give them. But here's the footnote you want to add to that. That nowadays there are a lot of people who are deceitful. They'll come to you to ask you, they look poor, but all you know, they make more money in the year than you. Right? They're probably richer than you, and you're giving them. And there's a lot of things now, Allah musta'an. Today we've seen in the media, documentary news reports showing us people who are professional panhandlers, professional beggars. So with this addition that today's time there's a lot of khiyana, a lot of deception and trickery, it's added to the fact that it's best not to give unless to everybody. For some people at trial, they give everybody who asks them. If you do this, you're going to become poor yourself. Everyone will ask you and you'll give. And you don't discern, this person maybe he's iffy or not, it doesn't look like he's going to use the money the nice way, so maybe I should offer him something else, somebody else. So if you give to everybody, you fall into the problem, which is that a lot of people are deceiving others. So it's a benefit to add to the fact that today's reality is that a lot of people are lying. And this is something Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen, he mentioned again in Sharh Al-Salihin, a nice benefit where he says in reality there's a trial which we are afflicted with, which is for the one who is trying to return or pay, some compensate the one who's asking for something, which is many of the people who are asking and begging are liars, kadhibun. They're liars, he said. Some of them, you say, they might be more rich than the one who's asking. Every person who gives them, or every person, how many people, he said, something, and reality this person himself is a mulhif. Means he's a person who's a mulhif. He's one who's not in need. He's above need. He actually has. And then he says, then when he passes away, you find with them that he has a lot of gold and silver and money at home. Means in his savings from all the panhandling and begging he's been doing. So he says, with this reality then, it's not encouraged that you give every questioner or every beggar who asks, because of the time period we live in, which there's lots of lying and deception. And this has become now a difficulty. And he mentions this in Sharh Al-Salihin, volume 3, page 109. So a benefit we add to that is that with that being said, if someone's condition is unknown to you, you can give, it's sunnah to give, but it's not a must. So it's very important, we put that, it's not a must. So someone should not be making it a must on someone. Why didn't you give this homeless man? I don't know his situation. And so it's sunnah to give, but I didn't give out of fear that he could be someone who's deceptive. And everyone is different, perhaps they know themselves better when to give or not to give, but this is the situation we're in. So reality is, this is what is the summary. So if you know someone is going to buy and use the money for haram, it's haram to give them. That's number one. If you don't know the condition, the Shaykh Ibn Baz said, the beggar who's asking you his condition is unknown, it's sunnah to give them. Only sunnah, not a must. And the last one, if you're not sure at all, and you're really confused, then you can direct him to that which is better. And we would also advise you would direct him to the government. Because we said before, it's permissible to ask the government. And in our country here, we know the government, they have resources for those who are needy, whether it be to get help to unemployment or welfare or to get job training, etc. So the person, if he's even more well-wishing, he tells us, perhaps this person get the help they really need it. My dollar, your dollar is not going to help somebody better off the street than giving them resources that they need. And the reason why we encourage them for the government is because of the hadith we mentioned earlier. Rasul said, إِلَّا أَن يَسْأَلُ الرَّجُلُ سُلْطَانًا. Unless a man, he asks a ruler, which is the government. And there's no prohibition asking the government or the ruler for something which you need, because it's from their responsibility to give you. So a third option would be that if you're really worried for this person's situation, you direct them that which is better. Here's where you can get real help. Here's a government office, I can help you find more resources. Better than if I give you just a little bit. So with that being said then, the next part now, the Shaykh is going to actually get into the hadith, which is a shahid or the witness and the proof for the whole chapter. Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma reported that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, من سأل بالله فأعطوه ومن استعاذ بالله فأعيذوه ومن دعاكم فأجيبوه ومن صنع إليكم معروفا فكافئوه فإن لم تجدوا ما تكافئونه فادعوا له حتى تروا أنكم قد كفأتموه. Ibn Umar said, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever asks you by Allah's name, then give him. So this is the whole point of the proof for this whole chapter. Whoever seeks protection by Allah's name, grant him the protection and refuge. Whoever invites you, accept their invitation. Whoever does any good to you, pay him back. If you find out what to pay him back with, supplicate for him until you cannot or you think that you paid him back. Reported by Abu Dawood, Nasai and others, and the hadith is sahih. Hadith is sahih hadith. So in this hadith now we benefit a few things. The first is that the first part of the hadith is a proof for this. Man sa'ala, whoever asks you by Allah, fa'u'tuhu, then give him. So this is the benefit. If they ask you by Allah's name, as'aluka billah, I ask you by Allah, then you have to give it to them if you're able to, and there's no harm on you for that. So we covered that right now in just this introduction. What about the next part, which is somebody asks you for protection? Then you should grant them. They ask you by Allah's name to give them protection. So for example, they say, A'udhu billahi mink, I seek refuge in Allah from you, or from such and such. Then if you're able to, if you're the one being sought refuge from, you give them the refuge. It's obligatory. They seek refuge in you, you give them refuge. Now the Shaykh explains this. He says that example of this is the hadith. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he married one woman, Ibn al-Jawn, and when he came upon her, means after the marriage contract, she said, I seek refuge in Allah from you, to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you sought refuge with the great one, or one who is great, go back to your family. Hadith in Bukhari. So she sought refuge in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he divorced her. And then so why did he do this? Because of this hadith, she asked by Allah. He said, لَقَدْ عُدْتِ بِالْعَظِيمِ, you verily asked for refuge by one who is great. So go back to your family. So this is a proof, an example of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam applying this hadith. Who's ever asking you by Allah's name, then grant them. فَأَعِذُوهُ. So the benefit we take from this is that the Rasul practiced this, and this is from the Tawheed, because again, venerating Allah. Why are we seeking someone to seek refuge in us from ourselves or from something? You grant them that out of respect for Allah, because they use Allah's name and venerate Allah's name. Now the question some may ask, why did this woman seek refuge in Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam? It's Rasulullah. How does she not want to marry him? And so many the ulama, they interpret this hadith, or they've gone into the explanation, many opinions. Amongst those opinions that are mentioned is that she didn't know he was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was not aware of his prophethood. So she ended up saying such a statement, not knowing that he's Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that women, like the Sahabiyat, his Azwaj, were married to him, and he's one who is not to be rejected in marriage. Other interpretations are that she had to return to her family for such and such situation, so she wished to return, etc. Other interpretations were given. But one of them which seems to come is that she didn't really know. So those are some of the explanations as to why she even said this, because it sounds strange, right? Why would someone say that to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And we know that other women will come and try to ask Rasulullah to marry her. And then we have this example. Nonetheless, he says, however, an exception is made if someone seeks refuge avoiding something obligatory. So someone says, I seek refuge in Allah from the 5 daily prayers, or from the congregational prayer. That's rejected, absolutely, right? You have to pray. Whether or not the person tries to flee from it by using this, means I seek refuge in Allah from you, from taking me to the prayer, or something like this. Then you cannot obey someone in this. That's the benefit here. None of this should be in relation to what's haram. So someone cannot ask you for haram, you give them. They can't seek refuge in you for something which is obligatory that they do. It cannot be. He says also whether they use Allah's name, so they can say Allah's name or something along those lines. It means Allah's other names they can use. It's all the same. And the Shaykh mentioned the benefit in terms of someone who seeks refuge in the haram. Because we know the haram as a space, is a sanctuary. It's sacred. So someone flees to haram, he's a mujrim, criminal, he ran to the haram, we can't get him there. He's safe. Shaykh said, wait for him. No one buys and sells with him. You wait for him to come out. You can't go in there, arrest, or try to apply a punishment on someone in the haram. Of course, there's dire situation where that might have to be the case. But this also shows you respect for the haram likewise. Someone ran in the haram seeking refuge, he's safe space. But the benefit of taking this is that you cannot seek refuge in something which is prohibited. But if someone does seek refuge in you for something, then you grant them that request out of veneration for Allah. Also, if we remind ourselves of the story of Maryam alayhi salam, when the man approached her in the room, what did she say? Huh? And so Surah Maryam, when it was Jibreel, but she didn't know it was Jibreel. قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك. قالت, she said, I say إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك. I seek Allah Rahman. I seek refuge in Rahman from you. It's a benefit there in the ayah as well, the similar point. And of course, she didn't know it was Jibreel. So somebody else will say, SubhanAllah, how can Maryam said that? She didn't know that he explained. I'm the messenger of Allah to you. Here's so the benefit, we take that if you say Ar-Rahman or Allah, it's the same, it's been ruling. But even we have example in Maryam alayhi salam. So someone would say that seek refuge in you, for example, you're going to take something from them or you're going to harm, you say this, you respect them. Very important, we respect Allah's name subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next, if someone invites you, then you have to accept. Whoever invites you, accept his invitation. So here we benefit from the ahkam, the rulings in relation to invitation. So if someone invites you to something, an invitation to a meal, to their house, the etiquette in Islam is that you must reply. It's wajib. Shaykh said what's apparent from the hadith is obligation to answer that. This is the view of the Zahiriyya, amongst the group of fuqaha known as the Zahiriyya. Those who take the apparent literal meaning of text, they took the opinion it's obligation, where the majority of scholars say it's only recommendation. But what we benefit from this is that he says on top of this, if it's a wedding ceremony like a walima, it's wajib more. That one is encouraged. And some said that one is obligation, not the others. But what seems to be more correct is obligation. All of them, if you're able to, and there's no reason not to. So we need to take a benefit here from the etiquette of Islam, the huquq of the Muslimin. If someone invites you for something, you have to attend. Today, sometimes we have laxity in this matter. Someone invites you to the house, you just don't feel like going. It's not befitting. Someone may be told to prepare for you, and you say, maybe tomorrow. It's not the etiquette of Islam. Very important. Look at this today in Islam, how Islam deals with this. But we don't want to hurt the feelings of others. But there are conditions to this now. Some may say, then anyone invites me anywhere, haram or halal, I have to go. So there's now conditions. He said the conditions are the following. Number one, that the inviter is not from those that must be deserted by the obligation or recommendation. Means the person who's inviting you is not someone who you should avoid anyways. Maybe someone invites you to a bad person. They're harmful to you, to other people. They have a history of doing wrong. Maybe they're upon some type of evil practices or beliefs. Like, for example, they're a person who does haram or does shirk and calls to it. Things that somebody you should avoid. So if that person is like this, you should avoid them. Either due to an obligation or recommendation, avoiding them. So if they're not from that category, or number two, that there should not be any reprehensible matter in the place. Nothing haram should be present. So examples like music being played there, alcohol being drunk there, dancing, other things like this. So if someone invites you to haram, you cannot attend unless the Shaykh says that you have choice in this matter, or you have ability to do one or two things. Either you can change the evil yourself, it means you can actually go there and change it, or you go to them and you answer the call. So we cannot answer the invitation like this. So if we know we can change it, we have to go there and change the evil. And this is better. If you're able to go there and tell everybody, turn off the music, it's haram, you're not allowed to have this, and you have someone of status to listen to you, this is good for you to go. You bring khayr there. But if you're not able to, you go there, you're just in the mix of everybody, it's haram. The Sahaba Salaf, they didn't have any shyness to not attend such matters, they wouldn't attend. In fact, some of them would ask, is there any flute played there, or lute, or flute, or things like this? They'll say yes or no. If they said yes, they said we're not coming. They're very frank in this matter. Very important for us to stand for our deen. Some should not feel shy. Alcohol is drunk. It's haram for us to be sitting at the table in which alcohol is being circulated. Hadith, Ahmed and Tirmidhi. So if someone is going to deal with, say, please, as a Muslim, I don't drink, I would request that there be no alcohol there. And if the person inviting has any good with them and also respect, you say, no problem, we'll not be drinking there. Alhamdulillah, this is good. But if you go there and it happens to arise, then you try your best to explain to them the situation, why can't I do this? But very important, we don't just go there and just sit there. Then the third one, that the inviter should be a Muslim, otherwise it's not obligatory to attend if it's not a Muslim. Meaning that the rights of the Muslim is stronger, because the Rasul said the rights of the Muslim, another Muslim are 6. So the rights of the Muslims, that you have to. What if it's not a Muslim, then you recommend that you go. If it's khair in there, you have to go, or family or something. But if it's not the same as obligation, because it's not a Muslim. In that the obligation is the rights of the Muslim. So you weigh in to see whether or not I should be attending this. And of course, if there's benefit, you attend. Something to do with your work, your school, you attend the gathering if it's going to benefit you. Fourthly, that this source of livelihood should not be for something haram. And this one, Shaykh explains, what if the person who's inviting you works in something that's not permissible? Works in a company that deals with gambling or something. Or he works in a company that does with insurance or something like this. Most of his money is from a user's bank. Can I attend his invitation or not? So he says there's 2 views on it. What's the stronger view? You can. Some scholars say you cannot, because if you know that, and you're just aiding him or her in the wrong that they do. But what's more correct is you're permissible for you to go. The sin is on them, and it's permissible for you. It's important. So even if the person's wealth is mixed, if the person's wealth is known, for example, he's collecting money from something haram, and he invites you to eat, it's halal for you to go. The proof the Shaykh uses, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam accepted the invitation of the Jewish woman who gave him the food and she poisoned the sheep. In Khaybar, another narration, they offered him a meal, the Jews, and he went. And we know the Jews used to deal with usury. Rasul didn't prohibit them, didn't stop him from attending that. So we benefit from that. You don't need to necessarily reject the invitation if the person is dealing with usury. Many of the Sahaba and Salaf were of this view, like Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Imam Ahmed and others. There's actually a very nice speech from Hafid ibn Rajab in Jami' Ulum al-Hikam. Perhaps another time, or we share that, or someone can return to it. Nice speech about dealing with this, because sometimes it's confusing. Your uncle, aunt, they deal with something, I don't know where their money comes from, all of these type of things. You attend, the sin is on them if they do anything wrong with their money, but for you it's halal. And so the benefit we take from then is that this 5th one is, and so the 4th one is not really a condition because it is allowed. The 5th one is the acceptance of invitation should not entail leaving off an obligation. So for example, if I have to go to the wedding and I'm going to miss my prayer, there's no one going to pray there, there's no prayer being done there, I have a problem. I have to attend until the prayer and I have to leave. Or if I go there and I have another obligation upon me to do something else, then I can. 2 obligations comes, you have to fulfill the obligation that's on you before you do something else of an obligation. The 6th one, it should not constitute any harm for the person answering the invitation, such as the invitation requires journeying or leaving his family. So if someone invites you overseas to the walima, do I have to attend? Alhamdulillah, we don't. This is too much for us. If everyone sees obligation, you have to travel, go on the plane to travel overseas. And this is actually something that happens at times. Someone invites you for a wedding back home. If you can't come, you can't come. It's too difficult for you. There's no harm in that. And the benefit we also need to take from this is that if there's an obligation or something which you are doing which prevents you from going, what is the etiquette then? So we're going to get to this. So Shaykh says, is honoring the invitation a right of Allah or the humans? He said it's the right of the humans. Because they're the ones who you're treating nicely and they're inviting you, so you need to excuse yourself with them. Of course, if someone invites you, it's from the sunnah and from the deen and the sharia to go. But from their huquq. So they invite you, they prepare something for you, it's not befitting you say, I can't come. And you don't have a legitimate excuse, nor have you even communicated that excuse. So he says here, if you request the inviter to kindly excuse you, and he does, there's no sin upon you. So a benefit we take, if you know you can't come, you should seek pardon. Sometimes people don't show up and they're invited. This is not befitting. You didn't tell anybody, I'm not coming. For this reason, pardon me. And if you go to Fath al-Bari, Hafiz ibn Hajar, he brings some narration of Sahaba, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, authentically he says, these are Asanid or Sahiha, or Sahih, he says that if they were invited to a wedding and they couldn't attend, they would tell the person, or they would go and tell them, I can't come. For this such a reason, if you pardon me, This is good. If not, I will come. Means themselves will go to the person inviting them and say that I'm not able to attend, so pardon me. If you say, if you want me to come, I'll still come. But if you pardon me, pardon me. So the etiquette, if you cannot come, you message the person. Now we have all these means of communication. No excuse. You tell them, sorry brother, I can't attend. Forgive me. And sometimes, if we don't do this, it creates ill feelings between the person. So if someone invited you specifically, prepared for you, and you didn't come, they may think very bad about you. And on top of that, you will not be invited again. Right? So this is not something of etiquette. You rejected the invitation, that's maybe your last one. And on top of this, the person has the right, the one who's inviting you, to say, no, you have to come. So for example, Ibn Umar, one man told him, he invited him to the wedding, he said, I seek pardon not to come. He said, no, you have to come. So come. So he had came, that's it. He tells you have to come, you have to come. It's wajib, right? You have to come, I want you there. So now you can't do anything about that. You should attend. Unless, of course, you have come for those excuses when you literally can't come. So we benefit from this, speaking to the person. This etiquette is sometimes lost. People don't communicate to the person, they're not coming. It's not that much, say, I'm sorry brother, forgive me, I can't come. And we have Salaf, they used to do this. On top of this also, some people, you may excuse yourself from them, they're just shy. They won't say don't come, or it's no problem, out of shyness. So in that case, you should still go, you should go there. If you go to the person and say, I cannot attend, forgive me, they're never going to say, no brother, you have to come. They're very shy of you. Then the benefit then wouldn't be there, so it's better to still attend. So this is a good practice, alhamdulillah. Shaykh, it's another issue. What about the invitation cards? If the invitation card takes the same ruling as verbal invitation. See, the cards that are sent to people and the receiver will not know, or is not known, then in this case we could say that it's not obligatory. It means there are certain cards you may write for a wedding or something. It's in general, nobody specific is getting it, everyone is getting one. In that case, it may come to you, may not come to you, may get lost in the mail. It's not wajib in that case. But if you know most likely they're intending you to come, so then they hand it to you, that means you're invited. Right? And for one of us, I don't think we have the problem that culturally, someone hands you an invitation, it means you're invited. You can't come and say, he didn't invite me specifically. Some people, they go there and say, it's not khas, he didn't intend me. They give it to you. This is very clear. The same way if they send somebody else. Now this is an important one. Sometimes people get confused. Somebody sends someone to send for you. There's some hadith, they come and they say authentically that the Rasul al-Rajul, the messenger of a man, is idhan. He sends somebody, says, you go and invite that person. When that person comes and says you're invited, from that person who invited you, you have to come now. You can't say he didn't invite me directly. Someone say, I didn't get anything from directly. He sent that person to send to you. Or sometimes somebody else will message you and they'll say, come, you're invited. So you may ask, who invited you? Or who is inviting me, you or him? He says, the person, okay, I have to come. Because if I'm invited and I go and invite someone who is not invited without permission, it's different. I come and invite all my friends who nobody invited. This is also not etiquette. Right? We don't do that as well. We were invited and you go and invite the whole jama'ah to come with you. In this case, the inviter has a chance to reject you at the door. You come, and it happened before. For example, 4 people are invited and you're the 5th. No one invited you. You invited yourself. Or somebody invited you without permission. Then the host has a chance to stop you and say, go. 4 in and the 5th you have to leave. And this happened at the time of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hadith Bukhari, I think it was the Sahabi Abu Shu'aib. He invited, and he was a butcher. He invited Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some Sahaba. 4 of them were invited. The 5th one he came along, following. So then when he came, there was 5 instead of 4. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, you're the host. You have decision to reject the 5th or accept him. He said, I will accept him, Ya Rasulullah. So this we say is the etiquette. It shows that as Muslims we should not be stepping the bounds and just accepting ourselves anywhere. Because it's not from the etiquette, it's not like this. If it's am, it's am. Someone says the microphone, everybody come. You can come, but if it's something specific, we need to show respect. And also, if we're invited, come with the etiquettes. To finish the chapter, if someone, again, he continues, he says, if someone gives you something, or who does you good, pay them back. Islam encourages us to return people the favor. So if he says, Rasulullah said, وَمَنْ سَنَعَ إِلَيْكُمْ مَعْرُوفًا, someone he did good to you, فَكَافِئُوهُ, compensate him. What does the compensation mean in this hadith? Shaykh says here, what is intended by this compensation is that you pay him back and so on. So it's intending financially. Someone who gave you a gift, another time you try to return that favor of the gift, if you're able. This is what is intended by here. And many ulama, when they explain the hadith, intending by it is material compensation. As for compensating him by way of dua and thanks and shukr, this is something lazim. You should always be doing. Someone does good to you, thank them. Very important. لا يشكر الله. The person doesn't thank Allah. من لا يشكر الناس. If you don't, doesn't thank the people, you should be thanking them. But if someone who gives you a gift, he says then it's something that you should pay them back. Now he says the person's high status, this is different, like a king or ruler, then it's not from etiquette to try to pay them back. For the king is someone who's high status, he has money and wealth. It's something we consider even disrespect if you try to pay back the king for a gift. He is richer than you, it's not befitting them. If someone has a higher status to give you, you don't try to pay them back. Because if we see on his way, try to outdo them. And also they're not in need of that. Usually people have status and wealth, they're not in need of your gift. They give you out of generosity. So what do you do in that case? Says you show them the kindness and you dua for them. And we see this in the story of Bilqis and Sulaymaan. Sulaymaan got angry alayhi salam when Bilqis tried to give him a gift. Sulaymaan, Allah gave him the whole ardh. He doesn't need her little gift. He would actually feel offended by that. And this is the case, someone who you know that has money. It's no point of giving him like this. You might feel like, why are you returning something I gave you and I specified for you? Make dua for me is better. But he says the opposite. If someone gave you and he's like you or lesser, you give them back. This is very good. What about someone who doesn't have? You don't have, then you make dua for them. فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا مَا تُكَافِئُونَهُ. If you don't have nothing to give them back, فَادْعُوا لَهُ. Make dua until you think you have returned the favor. Now the benefit here, what about saying Jazakallahu khairan? How does this apply to all of this? Because Jazakallahu khairan is the best of things. مَنْ صُنِعَ إِلَيْهِ مَعْرُوفًا فَقَالَ لِفَاعِلِهِ جَزَاكَ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا فَقَدْ أَبْلَغَ فِي الثَّنَاءِ. Hadith, Rasul said, the one who done good to you and you say Jazakallahu khairan, you reach the utmost, the pinnacle of praise. So I mentioned this, Jazakallahu khairan is the best way to repay, period. And it's something we should always be doing anyway. Jazakallahu khairan, we should repay them. And so much so far that if you even say this alone, you pay back any kind of compensation possible. That's sufficient. Jazakallahu khairan is not something light. And sometimes we may understand it differently. Someone says Jazakallahu khairan, like, what's that? Like, I'm expecting something more. Jazakallahu khairan is أبلغ في الثناء. We forgot sometimes because we're so common to say it. We forgot that's a huge praise. Asking Allah to reward you. Then the rizq of Allah خير وأبقى. It's better than you if someone will give you something back. We have to reprogram ourselves sometimes. We forgot because we say it so much. But if someone says this, there's no contradiction between that and also returning a favor. So if you say Jazakallahu khairan, Barakallahu feek, Hafizakallah, all of those ad'iyah or adhkar for returning the good, it's from the best things as well. So you can combine between both. You say this and you return a favor the other time, because this is someone who's your friend, and this is from the good etiquette of Islam. If someone give you a gift, tahabu. You love each other by giving gifts, you return a favor. And also you always make dua for them. But if you have nothing to return the favor, make dua for them. And dua, of course, is not any lesser. This is for one who's not able. You make dua, and it's also something very good. It's very good to make dua. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from his etiquette, that he used to make dua for the people often. But he also used to repay back gifts. Aisha mentions radiallahu ta'ala anha, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to yaqbul hadiyah, he used to accept it, ويثيب عليها, and he used to give back. So this is the sunnah of Rasul. He never only made dua, and he will give back dua, and all this in etiquette. So a benefit we take from this hadith as well. And Islam encourages us to be good to one another. If someone's good to you, you pay it back. Al jazaa al ihsan il ihsan. Someone does good to you, return the ihsan back. This is from Islam. Why is this such an important chapter? It creates harmony between us. Love and harmony between the Muslimin. And this is one thing you realize when we practice these hadith, we see that we become an ummah the way that Rasul Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be. An ummah based on love, based on sunnah, based on compassion, ta'awun, cooperation. We're not people of different discord. So this is the end of the chapter. The whole summary of this, what we're taking is that if someone asks you by Allah or seek refuge or protection with you, by Allah's name, you should respond to them. And this is in relation to the things that we mentioned, the conditions where someone is exempt. And we also benefit from the beautiful etiquette of Islam that we try to apply in our lives, of answering one another's invitation, and making dua for one another when they give us something, and return the favor if you're able, and also being respectful to one another. So inshallah we'll end with this much. If anyone has any questions or something. One of the questions here says, what is the source for the hadith about the stick and the whip? Means that the Sahaba, they accepted, they never asked anyone anything until the point that they didn't even ask anyone to pick up for them their whip or their stick if it fell out of their hands. And the hadith is reported in Muslim, hadith number, volume 2, page 721. Volume 2, page 721. Hadith Muslim. I think if the direct number, if I have the number directly, it's hadith number 1000. For hadith number, yeah, exactly this one, volume 2, page 721. This is the correct reference. As for the first part, it says, what if the person is known to be a time waster or annoying? Do you still have to accept? It's not clear what it's intended by accept. It means invitation. Invitation. In that case, you have to weigh in the pros and the cons. So, for example, someone is inviting you during the time of the lesson, or something like this, where you benefit from, then you proceed that which is more beneficial over that which is not. Because in this case, you have a type of obligation that precedes sitting with someone. So in this situation, we say that if something is more pressing for somebody, like using their time wisely, to seek knowledge, to do benefit, to do homework, do whatever, then this is better. But in terms of someone being annoying and harmful, generally, certain people, they might invite you sometimes, it's difficult. Then we say the best etiquette always to deal with people like this is try to be patient with them. You said, I have encouraged us to do da'wah to people. How do you do da'wah? Mix with them. You have to bear their harm. Al-mu'min alladhi yukhalitu an-nas, the believer who mixes with people, وَيَصْبِرُ عَلَى أَذَاهُمْ, and is patient with their harm, خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِ الَّذِي لَا يُخَالِطُ النَّاسِ وَلَا يَصْبِرُ عَلَى أَذَاهُم. He's better than the believer who doesn't mix with people at all, nor is patient with their harm. So there are sometimes people who may be burdensome at times. They invite you, you know they will waste some time. You go there and try to benefit them. If there's something pressing, more pressing, then you take the pressing matter on top of this. For example, I have a lesson and someone said, come out, let's have some tea or coffee, and I know I have to lesson, I say another time because I want to benefit. But if someone invited me on free to come over, and even though the person may be a bit annoying or burdensome, you use them in bad da'wah. You go and you encourage them khair. Because you never know, sitting with them, encouraging some fawaid and saying something better for them than wasting their time. And you will get hasanah for your da'wah, and they will also benefit. It's a win-win. And this is what we should think about. Today's time, if we avoid everyone who we think may be bothersome, burdensome, then who will be guided to anything? How will da'wah be spread? How can we improve people? Right? If we say, well, that person is going to waste my time. So, of course, it comes with boundaries. So if it's excessive, means they invite you every day, every time they're trying to waste time, then you don't have to respond. So it doesn't. When Ibn Mas'ud said, mix with the people as long as your deen is unharmed. So there's a boundary. If I mix with you every day, every time I'm getting angry, I'm getting upset, I'm wasting hours, then I'm sorry. Time and time. Now here and there I'll visit you. But if the person you feel good that you can benefit them, try to use that as an opportunity. Da'wah, Allah will aid you. Right? So just say you need to measure your situation. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions? Or yes.
What do you do, like, for example, often we have people who would invite you at like a later time, and you know that by the time you come back, if you come back late, you sleep late, you're going to miss money. So what's the...
So in cases like that, when they invite you to a wedding that's super late, for example, and you know if I go to the wedding, I'm not going to get up for Fajr, and there's some fatwa, some Shaykh say you don't have to attend that. It's too difficult for you, don't attend. There's also a recommendation the wedding should not be at midnight. It's not that, we don't know if this is some type of sunnah or etiquette some have come up with, that they do it at the 12th hour, they start the wedding. This is not befitting. And so some Shaykh say it's harmful for you, they're going to make up late for Fajr, so you don't have to attend. So we encourage people as well, when they invite people at appropriate times. It means not excessively early. You wouldn't invite someone by the Fajr. It's not befitting necessarily if you are busy. Or late, past midnight. So in the case like that, you don't have to attend. So because it causes harm. But if you're able to come between and do a little bit, it means you attend the beginning and leave. This is also another way to come between and to do a little bit good. You sit at the beginning and you leave. That way you're able to fulfill both. Wallahu a'lam.
In regards to the prohibition on, the general prohibition on asking someone for something, you have a situation where a brother is like traveling and he's like, ask me whatever you need me to bring you. Are you allowed to ask in that case?
If someone is asking you to bring them back something and they say ask whatever you want, and generally this person is sincerely asking you, ask them for something that which you need. If you know that they're asking you and you actually need it. For example, they said, you need anything, say I need this particular book I'm looking for, or particular thobe, or particular medicine. If you can find it, please bring it for me. This is something okay. But you wouldn't ask them for that which they can't bring back. They ask you, and sometimes people ask this customarily. They never really intend you say yes. And they say, well, I need this and this and this, and you bring them a long list. This is also a bad manner. So if you ask for something you need it's good to ask. But if they're asking because they're a brother in faith and they know there's something that you probably want and they have access to it, not best. Because sometimes the brothers we ask for another, if you're there, give me this. And later on when they're doing something else, they give you that. This is khayr. This is okay. But you obviously don't ask them for that which is not possible to be brought back. Right? So it's always better. But if you feel again that the person asking you and you don't want to ask, you say, brother, it's okay. Right? So this is the best always, not to ask if you don't need it. But if it's something your brother, you're close to them, you're asking you, and you know that they can bring you some khair, you ask them, no problem. Something a little bit here, please bring back this. And then what you do later on, you pay the favor. When you're out somewhere or something, you get them something for them too. Yeah. What's that?
What would be an example of
Ithal means altruism, to give up that which you're in need of in favor of somebody else. So Sahaba, for example, the Ansar, they gave up their houses. Some of them mean they're willing to give up their family. It means if they have multiple wives, they give someone to marry their other wives to their brother out of favoring them. And we know that not all the Ansar are rich. So some of the wealth they were giving, the land or the housing, the food, they needed it too. So that's the type of Ithal. You give somebody, you have, for example, only a little bit of money, and you say to the person, this is extra money, but here, you take it. I want you to benefit from it. This is a higher level. This is one of the best of the levels someone can reach. But it's not must, because again, we say, وَابْدَأْ بِنَفْسِكَ, begin with yourself. So if you know, I only have a little bit for myself, and I cannot do without it, you start with yourself. It's not from greed. This is taking care of yourself. You have to give preference to yourself. You have to begin with yourself, even with your family. If between your friends and your family needs something, your friends are asking you something, you give to your family. وَابْدَأْ مَنْ تَعُودُ. Those who are under your responsibility, you have to aid them first. So ithal is like that, but there's no ithal when it comes to the ibadat or khairat. As some mistake, you come for the adhan, or go ahead, faddal, brother, you make adhan. No. I came first, I'm making the adhan. Ibn Hajj makes his point, there's no such thing like this. Some people, they come today first row, faddal. First row, it's not something small. If you're first row, I'm standing the first row. I'm not letting you come take it. And this is something we have become accustomed to because people have lost that kind of competition for khair. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. So khairat, we should be rushing to be first. But in other terms of khairat, like giving, we should also be the first in giving others something. But when it comes to like salah and the adhan and stuff, and you first, this is khair. Rasulullah praised this type of reward for these actions. So this is a common problem some people have, and this is not the ithar we're talking about. Allahu A'lam. Now.
It doesn't include being imam, that's different, right?
That's different. For the imam, there's a particular conditions and deservedness. So to be the imam depends on the situation, the one who's more befitting. So the one who is supposed to be the imam, from us, our angle, from the congregation, from our sunnahs to put the proper person forward. Even if they feel they don't want to, we all get khair when we put you forward because Rasulullah told us about the one who knows more Quran than Sunnah. So there's no point of saying, you lead. You're more deserving to lead. You have to. It's Sunnah. It's better for us.
There's something known in the Arab culture, such as in the marriage steps, like reading Fatiha. And basically multiple ulama say it's a bid'ah. So if you get invited by a family member, should you still go or?
Well, that's the thing. Things like this, are innovations in particular customs or ibadat or particular contracts, like reading Fatiha in a marriage contract, which is an innovation. We should not attend it if we know it's an innovation. Rather, we try to explain to them that it should not be happening in the first place. Very important. When we hear about these things in the initial occurrences, we try to give them nasiha. We don't want to wait till day of they ask you to come and say, I can't come, and you make a storm that it's wrong. You should have told us earlier so everybody can stop it. So what you try to do, you hear about it, you advise those, like family members, especially those who have say this is an innovation. Everyone can read Fatiha. This is not, read Fatiha collectively. This is not known. The Sahaba ever did this. Rasulullah did this. So we try to advise them beforehand to end it. But if they didn't press on it, they know it's wrong. You explain to them, and they still say, "But we have to." They say, "I'm not attending." Sorry, I cannot attend. The same because innovation like this, when you explain to the people and you give them the proof and the clarification, now it's your choice if you want to carry on with that. For me, I'm not attending. So you have a right in that to not attend because of the innovation.
But what if they invited you literally a day before, 2 days before, and you had no time? to explain to them.
That's why you take them easy. You explain to them, for me personally, I cannot do it. And sometimes it may sound harsh in the beginning to reject certain things like this, but later on, certain things will become clear to the people that what you did was right. Maybe right now they think that you did is totally wrong. They get angry with you, but later on they learn more about it. Say, SubhanAllah, you're right. That day you didn't come with us. So, but it's better. You can't take the situation and say, oh, I have to go now because the day before. You don't have to go because you know it's wrong. And you also try to see what's the outcome of this. So for example, if I'm the person in the family myself, or for example, it's your actual contract, you're not doing the Fatiha either. If that's going to happen, I'm not present. You can put someone else to do it for me. I'm not going to be there. So you have to take charge in those situations when you have ability. But if you cannot, then you try to protect yourself. And it's the same thing with weddings, which you know there's going to be music or other haram, and they invite you and you know, and they're telling you it's going to be, well, you still have to come. You have to take a stand and say, I'm sorry, I cannot attend. And because of this reason, if they don't listen to you, you do it for the sake of Allah. And inshallah, with that kind of strength, Allah will open their eyes later on. When such things occur, they'll say, yes, this is not correct. And we've seen before, initially a problem, and later on, acceptance. That what you did was actually more correct. So this is important. Unless, of course, you can go there and stop it, this is even better, right? You go and you stop it. Allahu A'lam.
I was going to ask about the fundraising. Is it from Islam, and does it goes under mas'ala?
Issue of fundraising in terms of being mas'ala. So this is something important. We understand what is intended by the fundraising as an event that occurs. The people, they come, and then we pressure the people to give, or we force them to give, or we make this an event where people are now paying to come in. And like this, as we see today in the modern means, this is not something we know from the tradition of Islam. Fundraising exists in this fashion of manner. What is intended of fundraising? Just to collect money for a certain cause without forcing anyone to give, and simply making the proclamation, so-and-so mashru' or khair is going on. If you want to give, give. If you don't want, that best is okay. Ta'awan, help us. And you leave it like this, then this is not the fundraising that is anything wrong with. Some occasions, Rasulullah encouraged people to give sadaqah, and they gave for it, and they gave. But as to make it an event, and now it became a sabil of da'wah, this is not something we know traditionally to find in the Quran and Sunnah proof for it. So it can lead to eventually the next thing, which is the begging. Because parcel of the process of the fundraising is to pressure the people, literally beg them. And sometimes the begging is apparent, clear language to get money from people. We say this is not allowed because it's not a hajj. Because we said, when is begging allowed? When there's a need. And so building this particular facility is not a necessary need. Right? In terms of such that we bother people like this, means that no one is going to be harmed, or anyone's going to be physically bothered by the fact that we didn't build our particular facility. Rather, we should do it the correct way, with barakah, invite people khair and leave it to them to bring forward. Alhamdulillah, the people of khair are always there. So we say this is a type of, it can include a type of begging, yes. Sometimes it becomes even dangerous, because people are felt to give, not out of Allah's sake, but out of embarrassment and shyness. They give to save face. Let nobody here think I'm stingy. I give. SubhanAllah, now how is this for the sake of Allah? How is this barakah khair? We're making ihraj and we're squeezing the people to give. So we say this, we should avoid these things. People should do things in the sunnah way, which is to call for khair and let the people of khair come forward, and whoever can, make dua, no problem. Right? This is Allah Alam, yeah. Yeah, no.
What was the name of the book you mentioned that has a compilation?
So Shaykh Imam al-Wadi'i, Ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i, has a small little treatise called Dhamm al-Mas'ala, the dispraise of begging, in which it collects over 100 ahadith about the prohibition of begging and asking the people. And what it teaches us, again, as we covered this chapter, that Islam is against this idea of creating unnecessary need and begging if it's not needed. And also Islam encourages us to be the upper hand, not the lower hand. So it's a very good read if someone wishes to read all the hadith and to have full detail. So it's a book that you can find easily available on the internet as well.
Still more questions from the sisters.
Yeah. As the first question says, I'm not sure of the authenticity, but there's a hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala who gave her last bit of food to a beggar when she was supposedly to break her fast. She's supposed to break her fast, and later on someone came and gave her a goat, and the benefit taken from it. The point was that when you give for the sake of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you more barakah. Yeah, we have to take care of ourselves first, so where is the balance between the two? So first we need to check the authenticity of this hadith. We did hear about it before, Wallahu a'lam. We checked first to see the authenticity of that narration. And secondly is that Aisha radiallahu anha, if this narration is authentic, we see this bab ithar, or altruism. And so we know that to be altruistic is the higher way. But in terms of somebody himself as a ruling, for him or herself, they should begin with themselves. So some hadith even come that you give sadaqah to yourself. By feeding and clothing yourself, if someone is not able to give to the other good causes, take care of yourself. So what we benefit from this is that there's a difference between a higher level, which is that somebody is able to give others and over preference themselves, means that they will eat less and they'll give the good food to others, or they will literally take most of their resources or a salary and give it to others and keep little for themselves. Many of the Sahaba and Salaf were like this. So this is a higher level. As for someone's basic level, then what he needs to know is that you always help yourself first, then those immediately near you, and then those outside of you. So that's how it works. Even when it comes to dua, رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ, Allah forgive me, then my parents, and those out. You begin with yourself. And why is this important? Because in Islam, you have responsibility over yourself. So this narration, inshallah, we will check for authenticity, and then we can see if it's authentic, and then how to compare what we're mentioning now. The second says, is it wrong to slowly cut someone off because they have repeatedly disrespected you and put you in a bad mood? In Islam, if somebody is harmful to you and bring harm to you, then it's permissible in Islam to cut them off if that is going to create khair in it. And also in that cutting them off is a relief for you. Now this is important to pay attention to, that if it's going to create a benefit, and also it's going to prevent you from harm. For someone to say, well, somebody always puts me in a bad mood, then we should know the general origin of people, as many of the hukama, the wise people have said, is that people are burdensome to begin with. The nature of people is that if you mix with them, you're going to be harmed. You can read it, you can see this in examples in many of the people who they witness this themselves daily, that when you mix with people, you're always going to be harmed one way or another. That's nature. But if someone's often bothering you, then what you do, instead of cutting them off, which is the last kind of resort, hajr is a very strong type of action to cut somebody off, boycott them. You can boycott in different ways. There are different mannerisms of boycotting someone. So one of them is to decrease your sitting with them. Nabi al-Fajr is teaching the Road al-Uqara. There are some great benefits in that book about dealing with people like this who may harm you and you interact with them frequently. So one thing you can do is just to diminish your sittings with them. So instead of sitting them weekly, bi-weekly. Alright, so you can have less. Or if you sit with them every day, every other day, once a week, twice a week, like this, you lessen it. So you save yourself. Next thing we obviously pay attention to, the person is harming you, is it willingly or unwillingly? Some people, they don't know if they're harming you. They may behave in a certain way, you find annoyance by it, because the way they speak, what they say, you're like, subhanAllah, this is so annoying to me. Maybe you have to communicate to them, so please, I don't like when you say this, I get annoyed with this. And that could actually solve the problem. You be frank with one another. If you're doing something about another, if you're a brother, someone's sister to sister, they should be frank with each other. They tell them, this is bothering me. And this is a good nasiha to tell them this way so that they can avoid it, because they might not intend. But if they're intentionally doing it, some people are like this, then you diminish them. If they're often harming you, and you know it's going to harm you, save them, you cut them off then. If you have to, you have to. But what we need to remind ourselves is boycotting someone, our people, it should not be our first resort. It's very important. We're not always cutting people off. Because this kind of muqata'a is going to create discord amongst the community, and the Muslims will all be scattered. And also there are different ways. وَهَجُرْهُمْ هَجَرًا جَمِيلًا. Allah says, Muhammad ﷺ abandoned them with a beautiful abandonment. So some say the hajr jameel, like you don't smile with certain people. So certain people you meet them, you're not so smiley. That's type of abandonment because of their interaction with them. There's different levels. Actually, there's books on this, how to go about. So we say that because people are sensitive as well in society, you need to take the best steps. Start off with diminishing your sitting with them if you find they're always annoying you. If that doesn't work, you speak to them about it, bibab nasiha, not this type of humiliation. You advise them secretly or privately, listen, this is annoying to me. I can't really deal with this, and I ask one another to pardon each other. We all do this to each other. And if it's someone who just doesn't heed those lessons, that you take the last resort. If you need to, you just distance yourself totally. Allahu A'lam. And of course, we always encourage the people, bringing the hearts together and unifying people is better than separating them. Now, inshallah, we'll end with this much. Subhanakallah bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.